Hey, welcome to the Therapist Mom with me, Dr. Jodi, streaming live Mondays at 8 p.m. on Bold Brave TV. So excited for this fifth episode because we are going to be we're talking about what to say when you're talking to yourself. Because we have a pandemic going on, especially in Western culture, individualistic culture, to judge ourselves so harshly. And this is causing so many problems. Actually, it's such an overlooked problem because it creates all these other problems in our life, like stress, anxiety, depression. It creates poor relationships, a negative self-view, so many problems, missed opportunities, analysis paralysis. Almost all the problems that we have are caused by this negative self-judgment and the way we express that negative self-judgment when we talk to ourselves. Listen, when you talk to yourself, your brain hears you. So I'm so glad to have you here tonight. We are going to talk about why this happens because sometimes that helps. It really helps us understand what to do, how to think about it so that we know how to go forward. Because when we're asking the question why, so often we get distracted by trying to figure that out. It becomes its own problem. And then we get upset because we can't figure it out. And that is such a distraction for how to go forward in your life and get rid of this problem. So we're going to be talking all about self-criticism, negative self-judgment, why we do it. And I'm going to tell you this secret here. It's not you. It is not you. This is a product of our culture, our Western culture, our individualistic culture, because it comes from these operations of modern power. And this philosopher, Michel Foucault, started talking about this in the last century, understanding that in some Western cultures, there's not like a leader that tells us everything that we have to do, like a moral leader that tells us everything that we have to do. We have to figure that out ourselves. And so we walk around the world as if we're in a fishbowl. We feel like everybody is looking at us. So, we feel like everybody's looking at us and judging us to make sure that we belong. So to make sure we're good enough, smart enough, brave enough, pretty enough, young enough, skinny enough, right? We are so worried about not being up to the standards of our society, lest we get kicked out, right? Unless we get excluded. We do not want to get excluded. And this is biological. Biologically, if we were discluded from society, we couldn't survive out there by ourselves. So our innate biological need to belong is so strong, but we don't know what the standards are for being included. And so we try to hit them higher just so we could make it, because it's that dire for us to make it, that dire for us to belong. And so we overshoot. That's why perfectionism is such a problem in our culture, because we have these standards and we have to meet them exactly, or else somebody's going to know that we are not perfect, or that we don't belong, or that we shouldn't be allowed because we are subadequate. And what happens is that you cannot be perfect in that kind of situation. That was coming up by accident here. So we're live. We're recording live. Actually, tonight's episode is pre-recorded, so you will not see me answering your comments in real time. After the show airs, I'm going to go back and answer all of your questions. So please write them anyway. If you're watching us live on LinkedIn, if you're watching us live on YouTube or on Facebook, please say hello, and I will respond to you after this airs. But usually on Monday nights at 8 p.m., we are live. So let's get back to the subject here. So we are so distracted by trying to figure out if we are enough. And because we don't know the exact standards, there's not like a universal standard. There's these assumptions of standards. And because there's these assumptions of standards, we don't want to be wrong. And so we're trying to overshoot them, like I said. But even if we try to overshoot them, We never think that we succeed. Because they're so undefined, we can never feel like, oh, we succeeded and we're fine. That's why we're all running around here with shabby self-esteems. We're all judging ourselves. So this is another thing, is our ego is really trying to protect us. It works really, really hard to protect you, and it wants to keep the status quo. But it doesn't think anything is okay, right? It works so hard to try to protect you that if it doesn't find a problem, it'll keep looking until it finds a problem, because it thinks it's not doing its job if it doesn't find a problem. So it's going to critique you, right? Not knowing if you're totally safe, like worrying that there's a problem. What happens is that it feels chaotic and out of control. And when things feel chaotic and out of control, that doesn't feel good to us humans at all. And so we try then to get into more control. So then we judge that we're out of control, right? So we're like, I don't know if this is okay, because I don't know if I'm totally safe. So you better look for a problem, brain, and make sure you get all the problems so I don't miss any problems. And something bad might happen to me because I missed something. And so our brain is looking for a problem. And if it's going to look for a problem, it's going to find a problem, because that monkey mind knows how to find problems. It knows how to make up problems and convince us that they are very, very important and central and significant problems in our life. They sound really good. It's really logical. And it gets us hook, line, and sinker like so much. But we have to believe it. We have to participate in that. But it's so good at telling us that this is a problem that it is really easy to do. It's not you. It's not because you're weak. It's not because something's wrong with you. It's not because you're broken or you've had trauma. Of course, it's all exaggerated. If you've had difficult experiences in your life and traumatic experiences, these things are exaggerated. But you still could go forward and do something about it, right? This is a natural human response to the culture that we're living in. This culture with these really high standards. It's a natural human response. But if you understood it, you could override it. So in the third segment today, we're going to talk about exactly how you're going to do that. I'm going to tell a couple stories because I want to see if you could relate to these before we go to commercial. I want to tell a couple stories here one is about my mom. And one time my mom, this is years ago, and it's a really tragic event happened, is her friend collapsed and passed away. And they were on vacation, and so my mom was in the hospital waiting for her kids to come, and spent that time in the hospital helping her kids, face this and deal with it and feel all of their feelings. This was my mom's really close friend at the time. So it was a horrible tragedy. When she came home finally, my sister and I were having lunch with her, and she was talking about it, and she was telling us about what happened, and she was like, I just can't get over it. I just can't get over this. And we were like, Mom, it's a week. It's only a week. So this is also a problem with the way we talk to ourselves, is that when we have regular human feelings, we are uncomfortable. And so we think that we're doing something wrong. So instead of allowing ourselves to feel those things and having compassion and feeling like and understanding that that's a regular human response to this, we right away think we're doing something wrong because we're not handling it well. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Yeah. I mean, it is a regular, common, daily event that happens when we have something that we're feeling bad about. And so you really want to think about how harsh we are with ourselves. We don't even allow ourselves to feel. So we don't allow ourselves to function and be imperfect, and then we don't allow ourselves to feel. All of that is negative self-judgment working against us and totally distracting us from whatever else good stuff that we have in our life. Increasing, like I said, anxiety, causing poor relationships, causing missed opportunities, analysis paralysis. Do y'all know what analysis paralysis means? Analysis paralysis means that you are so in your head, worrying if you could do it right or that you can't do it or you might fail, that you're stuck and you don't go forward because you're stuck. That's called analysis paralysis. And that happens to a lot of us because we're so afraid of failing, or we're so afraid of not being able to, or struggling at all. And it's not because we're afraid of struggling. Like, we're not so afraid of struggling, but we're probably afraid of other people noticing that we're struggling or noticing that we're having problems. We're afraid of people thinking bad things about us or that we're inadequate. And then actually that paralysis is like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Actually, a lot of these things are self-fulfilling prophecy. Did you ever say to yourself, what's the use? I'm just going to fail anyway. What's the use? You fail at 100% of the things that you don't try at, right? So this really affects like so much of our things that we love and really want to do well. Let me tell you another story about a client of mine. She was a teenager, and she had a breakup, really devastating, heartbreaking breakup. Her first love, and she was so upset about it. Of course. Right? If you love somebody or care about them a lot and then you feel rejected by them, isn't that a regular human response? Right? It's a regular human response to what happened. And so she was feeling all the feels. And she said to me over and over, like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to handle this. And what that was telling me was that she wasn't sure she was doing it right. Like, when she was uncomfortable, she thinks she's handling stuff wrong. So we could cope really well. We could have a lot of good coping, but we're still going to feel our feelings. They're regular human reactions to what's going on. And in fact, what I'm going to tell you soon in the next segment is, if you allow yourself to feel and have compassion, you don't have to stay there. We're so worried about staying in the feelings that we really want to skirt away and run away from them because it feels so uncomfortable. In general, in our culture, we really have to get more comfortable being uncomfortable, because discomfort is not dangerous. But we've kind of programmed our mind into thinking that it is dangerous. But discomfort's not dangerous. When we have discomfort, not only do we get afraid of that and that feels out of control, so we think we're doing it wrong, when we feel uncomfortable, we right away go to, we must be doing it wrong. So it doesn't even have to go through the fear. It could be either just a judgment or fear and then the judgment. And that is what we're going to talk about, comes from that monkey mind. So the monkey mind is a term that was coined by Buddha. I was talking about the monkey swinging from tree to tree to tree, thinking about going from thought to thought to thought to thought, and thinking about that monkey mind. So we have feelings, we have responses to the context of our world, and then we add a lot of other stuff onto it. And that, my friend, is what causes most of our problems out there. Most of our problems come from those things that we add on top of it. I wanted to, before we go to break here, I'm going to tell you about my book so you could get it. This is a book. This is called Anxiety, I'm So Done With You. It's a teen's guide to ditching toxic stress and hardwiring your brain for happiness. This is a book for teens, it's for parents, it's for educators, it's for anybody who cares and worries about our young people or yourself, because really anxiety in young people and anxiety in adults, it's the same mechanisms. So this will not only help your loved one's anxiety, but yours as well. And if you're not a reader, you could listen to it on audiobook or listen to my podcast, listen to my podcast. You read a chapter, listen to the podcast, and I go a little bit more, a little deeper, and tell more stories in there. So we're going to go to commercial, and when I come back, we're going to talk more about the monkey mind. See you then. And we're back. You're watching The Therapist Mom with me, Dr. Jodi. I stream live Mondays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Bold Brave TV. So if you're watching this as a recording, come on and hang out with me live. Actually, tonight's episode is a recording because I'm away this week, so we pre-recorded this. So if you are making comments and asking me questions, I will answer them after this airs, tonight only. But usually come on Monday night and ask me your questions live, and I'd love to have some conversations with you and answer those questions that are on your heart. Because this generation, this anxious generation, Generation Z, this is a real problem. And it's a heartbreaking problem for people my age, people who are younger, people who are older, everybody who cares about this generation. And it's not only this generation, right? Anxiety and depression are pandemic in all generations, but these poor young people are really, really struggling. And there's some reasons for that. And I usually talk about some of those reasons. And let me just go over them now because we do have a little bit of time tonight. But, these are regular human responses to our modern world. Yes, your phone is a huge part of that. It's a huge part of that because it emphasizes comparison culture. And that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about self-criticism. And a big part of encouraging and multiplying self-criticism is comparison culture. We didn't even mention that tonight. And so when you look online and see all your friends or see all the people doing all this great stuff, you compare their highlight reel to your backstage mess that's in your head. Our head and what we're going through and how we feel about ourselves feels like very unique. It feels like very unique to you, but it is not unique to you at all. Most people are going around feeling that upset, but they don't look like it on the outside, just like you don't look like it on the outside. You hide it really well. So does everybody else, right? So does everybody else. So you feel like I'm a mess and everyone else is fine. They all look confident. They're walking around looking like they don't have a care in the world. And that's because you don't see what's going on in their head. This comes from our culture. These high standards that we have to measure ourselves against, then we could always conclude that we're inadequate because we don't understand exactly what that standard is. And so we're going to always just assume we're not meeting it. And the reason we assume we're not meeting it, to summarize what I talked about in the last segment, is that we don't want to get it wrong. Because if you get it wrong, you're kicked out of society. Biologically, we couldn't be kicked out of our community or else we would die out there, right? We couldn't live in the woods by ourselves. We needed community. And so that biological innate need for belonging is so powerfully strong that if somebody looks at us funny, if somebody is confused or somebody is in their own head and withdrawing from us, if somebody's not nice to us because they're having a bad day, all of it feels like such huge rejection, which is one of our biggest fears. And it's one of our biggest fears because we don't want to be excluded. Because if you're excluded from the group, you're dead. That's what it used to mean. So that's what our brain evolved for 2 million years. People had a problem with that timing. Then I did on my last video on a couple episodes ago, I was talking about the human brain developed for 2 million years. And this is like pre-human species, right? Our brain developed before we were humans even to survive, obviously, because then we evolved into more and more complex beings. So it wasn't just like all of a sudden the brain started in our humanoids. And that's where I get that date of 2 million years. And so thank you all the biologists who told me, called me out and said, that is a very long time. I stand by it. Google stands by it. Not that you believe Google for everything you have to know about, but all right, let's talk about the monkey mind. So first we have a response. We have regular feelings that come up in a response to something that happens. For example, like if somebody rejects us. If somebody rejects us, then immediately we feel sad, right? We feel a loss, we feel sad, we feel rejected, we feel bad about ourselves. And then right away, we begin to judge those feelings. Or say we felt angry. Say somebody didn't show up for an appointment with us and we feel a little frustrated or angry. anger is not really considered okay to feel in our culture, right? It's like anger is not okay to feel. And so right away when we feel angry, we begin to judge that anger. We begin to reject that anger, think something's wrong with us, have all this fear about what that anger is going to mean or do, or maybe make you act in a way that's inappropriate, and then people will hate you. All of these things come into our mind. So we have this anger, and then we have these globs of fear, this more emotion, these thoughts, which create more emotion. So it's increasing our emotion. And then we have these globs of negative self-judgment that it's like, how long am I going to feel like this? Why am I feeling this? Why is this bothering me so bad? How come I can't handle this? And it's exaggerating our feelings again. So not only do we have this regular human response to being rejected of sadness, we have all of this thing that increases and increases our emotional turmoil. And when you have all those things that increase your emotional turmoil, then you're going to feel worse. Then you're really going to think that you're overreacting. So the negative self-judgment is like layered on top of it, right? So on top of that, you're thinking again, like, what is wrong with me? It really feels like an overreaction, because it's not just that original loss. It's all of this other emotion that comes from those monkey minds, fear and negative self-judgment. And if we just peeled all that away and just allowed ourselves to feel the sadness, we didn't judge that sadness, we weren't afraid of that sadness, we just allowed ourselves to feel that sadness without all those stories, about all those questions and worries that we have, our bodies would know how to process it. Our brains and our bodies will know how to process it, and we'll go through that, we'll process it and go out the other side. What happens when you have all those negative self-judgments and anxieties? Oh, I forgot to put my countdown on. Darn it. Caleb, if you could just let me know how much time before commercial I've left now, so I could adjust my timer. So we have all these negative self-judgments, and then we have all these things that create stories, and then because we're trying to not feel that thing. We're so afraid of feeling that thing that we're globbing all this other stuff on and feeling it more and more and more intensely. So, okay. So that's what's happening. I just want you to understand what's happening, because if we could just say, oh yeah, I'm feeling sad, that makes sense, which I'm going to teach you about in the next segment, that would be so much easier. So I wanted to share with you that this is very, very helpful to me, because these thoughts and meaning making that we put on our feelings to try to protect ourselves, or to protect ourselves from those feelings, always make it worse. Always make it worse. And I'm going to give you another example. Our brain has two jobs. So always think about this. This is the most helpful idea and understanding that I've had in my whole career as a therapist. But our brain has two jobs. One is to survive and thrive, of course, and the other is to conserve calories. This is, again, an evolutionary biological thing. It's because we evolved so long as hunter-gatherers that we didn't have food right away. And so we really needed to conserve calories from any tasks that we might do that would use a lot of calories. And our brain is deciding immediately, is this for surviving and thriving? And if not, resist. So in our life right now, we're having tons and tons of this, the thumbs up are by accident here. So we're having tons and tons of resistance to all our tasks, because there's such a long distance between the tasks that we're doing and surviving and thriving. So maybe it's like doing our homework. Our brain is like, nope, that's not for surviving. But we don't know that the end game is to graduate and do something with our life, to fit into the group, or to have purpose, or to make meaning, right? That's too far of a gap for our brain, and our brain's like, don't want to do it. And we feel this biological resistance, and then we're like, it feels like oppression almost, that we have to do something that we don't want to do, because we also have that like entitlement for happiness thing going on. So your brain has these two jobs. So when we have that resistance, what happens is we put a lot of meaning around that resistance. Like something's wrong with me because I don't want to do stuff. I'm unmotivated. I'm lazy. I'm depressed or I'm anxious and I don't want to do those things. And so we put a lot of meaning around this resistance. Like I'm tired. Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. I'm a mess. I'm tired. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it. And then we get confused with this resistance and things that we want to do or don't want to do. So it feels like resistance because our brain is like, don't use the calories for that. But we can. We can use the calories for it because we are able to get food for ourselves. It wasn't like in the past. And so we are able, we don't need this anymore, this function, but it's been there for all this time and it's going to stay. But the problem is we don't understand it. And we put a lot of meaning around it that makes us feel really bad about ourselves. And when you feel really bad about yourself, you get that analysis paralysis. You get those negative self-judgments. Like, I'm lazy, I can't do stuff, I'm weak, I can't figure it out, I can't push myself. Or then you defend yourself. I shouldn't have to. I don't want to. I don't want to. And so a lot of times when people are telling me they don't want to, I don't know if they actually don't want to do something or they're feeling resistance. And I'm doing thumbs up to Caleb. Or if they're feeling that resistance and they think that they don't want to. So it's a really important distinction to have. Again, we're going to go to commercial. I'm going to tease out what's going to happen pretty soon is that I'm going to talk about my game. I have some flashcards here that I made, and we're going to talk about them. They're negative thinking flashcards, and I'm really excited to share that with you in the last segment tonight. But after we go to commercial, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about self-blame, and as promised, I'm going to teach you how to have self-compassion because we don't learn this stuff in school. I don't know why. You know, some people sometimes with clients, they're often saying, I don't know how to do that. How do you have self-compassion? It is the easiest thing. And this next segment is going to change your life. So we'll go to commercial right now and I'll see you in a few minutes. Welcome back to The Therapist Mom with me, Dr. Jodi. We stream live every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. Tonight, this is a pre-recorded session. So if you are asking me questions, please keep it up. Keep asking those questions. And after this airs live, I'm going to go back and answer all your questions. But normally on Mondays, please join me live because I'm going to answer your questions in real time. And I love to do that. I love that interaction with people who are watching live because I could really get a sense of how they're understanding the concepts that we're talking about or how they're responding to the guests that I have on the show. I have some really great guests coming up in the next couple months. And so I'm excited to bring those to you. And so follow along, www.thetherapistmom.show. If you want to get reminders for when the show's coming on and what the topics are going to be, go to www.thetherapistmom.show. And that's on my website, so you could hang out there and see all the old episodes and also sign up for a free video called Finding Your Inner Compass. And that's a free training that I have there for you. And then you get emails every time I have a show, and so you know what's going on. You're in the inner circle. Inner circle. Okay, back to self-criticism, negative self-judgment, and the opposite of that is self-compassion. Now, in my 28 years of being a therapist and working with people of all ages and working with these inner problems that I tell you, they're so common. This human condition it's such a common experience that we have that it's not you. If you're struggling at all, if you're going through any emotional turmoil at all, it's not you. It's your response to the context of our world. And if you understood that, you would stop being so distracted by thinking that you're different or something's wrong with you. And you'd have the energy and the vitality because it's exhausting thinking that you're the problem and that you don't belong. And so you are just exhausted and zapped out and want to isolate yourself with that. And that is not going to help you feel better. You're going to stay feeling miserable. And it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy. Oh, it's in your head. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's possible because I want you to have hope that things don't have to stay the way they are, that things can change, and that you have some power to do that. Now, like I keep talking about, we have this evolution affected our brain, and the modern world is not fitting with how our brain evolved to be. And so that's why we're getting so much anxiety, so much depression, so much negative self-judgment, especially now. I mean, it's happened a long time, but it's like increasing. You know that there's more and more people expressing that they're feeling bad. And it's not just because now the stigma is a little bit lower and people are talking about it. It's because it is increasing. It's definitely increasing. So in this segment, we're going to talk about, I forgot to put my, again, I'm trying to, I'm pretty new at doing this live show on this platform here. So, Caleb, would you just let me know again what's my timing? I forgot to put my timer on. See, it's like I've learned and understood these concepts for so long about not to expect perfectionism for myself. And thank you, 9 minutes. And so it's incredibly helpful and makes my life so much easier that I don't judge myself really harshly if I make a mistake like that. Because I'm going to keep making those kind of mistakes. And if you stick with me, then maybe I could model not being too hard on yourself. How about that? All right, so in this segment, we want to talk about self-compassion and how to have self-compassion, because I swear we really should be learning this in middle school because it's the easiest thing and it could change your life. I've come to understand in these 28 years that our biggest problem is a devaluing. Like, so when we feel invalidated, unworthy, that's when we feel bad. So there's so many things in the world that can happen to you that can make you feel unvalued because somebody's mean or someone does something terrible or all this stuff, right? And if you want to heal that, doesn't it make sense then a revaluing of what was lost or hurt is what heals it, right? So I've come to understand that trauma is you feel unheld, which is unheld. And when you're unheld, it's like you're unworthy to be held. Held means like safe, right? So that's a metaphor. I like to think about it. When people have experience of trauma, it's an overwhelms their senses. And so they feel obviously unsafe in those moments, so unheld. And so reholding or being able to hold, that's why the somatic work with recovery from trauma is so good for you, is because we hold it so much in our bodies because it feels so chaotic and out of control. All right, let me get back on. I'm sorry, I'm tangential. Okay, so self-compassion. So self-compassion is the key to emotional wellness because self-compassion is the revaluing, right? So the devaluing is the negative self-judgment. If we're talking about ourselves and our relationship with ourselves, the negative self-judgment is the devaluing. That's going to always make us feel bad, like unhealed, upset, feeling bad. And the revaluing is self-compassion. And that's how we heal. So that they're the opposite. Self-judgment and self-compassion are the opposite. And, when I really understood problems for a really long time, that negative self-judgment is by far what attaches us to everything, our problems. And if we didn't have that negative self-judgment, if we had compassion instead, we move through things much easier. That doesn't mean we're not hurt because we're still human. We're going to be hurt if somebody hurts us. But we would allow ourselves to feel that, do the things that we need to do to feel better, make meaning around that. That doesn't make it worse for us. It makes it better for us. And so things really shift when we have that self-compassion. So this is the thing, is that self-compassion Not only it decreases stress, it decreases anxiety, it decreases depression, it increases growth mindset, it improves your relationships. It improves, most of all, your relationship with yourself, which is what we're talking about in this episode. So it's healing. And it's the easiest thing, and it's free, and you could do it anytime, and you definitely, definitely, definitely deserve it. What you do when you want to have compassion for yourself is whatever you feel, whatever you're feeling in the whole world, if it's sad, upset, confused, weirded out, disgusted, frustrated, whatever you feel, that's a testimony to how precious something was that was either lost or threatened. Any negative feeling that you have, it's a testimony to how precious something was that was lost or threatened. That's why we're upset, is that something that we care about, something that's precious to us, has been lost or threatened in some way. And so we have a response, and the response is a feeling. Loss, sadness, and frustration, anger, all of those things are feelings, right? So when we have those feelings, if we had compassion for ourselves, it looks like this. You just say whatever you feel, anything at all you feel, you just say, I understand. I understand why I feel that way. I get it. That makes sense. We don't do that. Remember those stories I was telling about that young teenage girl, or that story about my mom? We don't get it. We don't get ourselves, right? We don't just say, yeah, I get it. I understand why you feel that way. Because we're like, I got to get out of this feeling. This is not okay. I got to get out of it. What am I going to do? How long am I going to, this is going to last? And why am I overreacting? And how am I going to go on with my life feeling like this? Right? We have all of these meanings that we make and stories that we tell ourselves to try to prevent ourselves from feeling, but actually lobs on a lot more emotional turmoil, getting it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. When if we said, oh, that makes sense. I feel sad today. It makes sense. I don't know if I hit the mic here, but I often kiss my hand and touch my heart here. When I think about self-compassion, it's a practice that I do to remind myself to just throw compassion at myself, to just say, I understand. I understand why I feel that way, why I'm thinking about this person who hurt me, why I'm thinking about this thing again that bothers me, that I haven't let go, or why something upsets me. If I have compassion for myself about it, I don't attach to those things, because if I didn't, if I was like, why am I doing this? Then I have to defend myself. So I say, why am I doing this? And then I have to be like, because it hurt me. And I'm like, but you were overreacting, but it wasn't fair. But you could just handle it better, or you should just be above it, rise above it, or whatever. Right? All this judgment stuff. Actually, we're fighting ourselves, because when we negatively judge ourselves, we also then have to defend ourselves. Often, mostly we're negatively judging ourselves, but sometimes we care enough about ourselves to defend ourselves. But it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction to defend yourself, to be honest, right? Because it feels like when you're under attack, even if it's by yourself, from yourself, you want to attack back, or you want to defend. That's human nature as well. But if you had self-compassion, that process wouldn't happen, and you would stop fighting yourself. Sometimes I think one of our biggest struggles, one of our biggest causes of our suffering, is that fighting with ourselves back and forth, back and forth. Stop it. Stop it. And when I tell people this, they're like, oh my gosh, yes. We don't even think about that. It's like an overlooked problem. This negative self-judgment, this negative self-criticism, we know that we do it. We know we have shabby self-esteem. We know we're really hard on ourselves. We know we beat ourselves up, but we don't actually, we don't really see the consequences and all of the mechanisms that are going into it. So this is all you have to know. Whatever you feel, anything at all that you feel, you just say to yourself, I get it. I understand why I feel that way. I understand why I feel that way. That makes sense. And when you do that, you sit and you feel it, and it can't stick to you. It doesn't stick. It has nowhere to kind of stick, no attachment to stick to, and it kind of processes itself out. So we're going to go to the last commercial in a couple seconds here. And when we come back, I am so excited to tell you about, try not to get this in front of my face here. I'm so excited to tell you about my new positive thinking flashcards. And we're going to go to commercial and we're going to come right back and talk about those. Hello, and we are back. This is the last segment here. We just have a couple more minutes here of the show. I'm so glad that you spent this time with me. I really appreciate you. I'm on every Monday, 8 p.m. on Bold Brave TV. If you want reminders of the show, to hear about what guests we have coming up, what topics I'm talking about, so you could get your questions ready. And pretty soon we'll open up the call-in feature. You go to www.therapistmom.show, www.therapistmom.show to get reminders about the show. And I'm going to send you my Finding Your Inner Compass video training for free also. And then you get, the reminders. I promised to tell you about my new card deck. It's called Redirect. And let me try to get it up here near the camera. All right. So it's called Redirect. It's Achieve a Positive Mindset Through Thought Reframing. So these are flashcards. It's not a game that you're playing, but you could play with a group because the discussions that it's going to ignite, I think it's going to be really helpful for us to think about how to reframe our thoughts. This is the thing, is that negative thinking is a habit. And yes, it comes out of the context of our culture, but we can override it. We have this amazing mammalian brain, and we could override all those things and change our habits to new habits that are better for us, that feel better. So there's all kinds of hope that you could do whatever that you want to do. So what these cards do is that they have a negative thought on one side, and then you think about how to reframe that. What other ways you could think that thought. So this says, I'll never earn enough for it. I'll never earn enough money for it. And then you think about all different ways that you might be able to say that instead of being so negative on yourself, instead of concluding the failure before you even started and tried. And then on the back, it gives an example of what you might be able to say. So I'll never earn enough for it. You practice on yourself, and then you look on the back for the suggestion, and you could compare, and that could ignite some discussions for you. I can work hard and save up for what is important to me. I can't get everything, but it's not nothing. Right? Just it shakes it up, because our negative thinking is like a conclusion. Right? There's like a truth, a conclusion there, and we really have to back that up and be like, I don't know what's going to happen. And so this is going to give you all kinds of examples, and then you're going to practice thinking that so it's not a hard truth, that there's no wiggle room. And you're going to learn how to make some wiggle room. If you are a teacher, if you're a counselor, if you're a parent, or if you're struggling with negative thinking, get yourself this deck. Go to jodiuman.com/redirect. All of these should be below this video, hopefully, if I get them on every platform. But jodiuman.com/redirect, and you can get yourself some cards for you. These are so exciting. This is the first time I'm announcing this publicly, and I'm excited. All right, thank you so much. Please join us next week. We're going to be talking about setting awesome personal boundaries. So next Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, we're going to talk about setting awesome personal boundaries. This might be for you, and I hope to see you there.